have special guest Misty from Luminous Fiber Arts here today. Welcome, Misty.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Kimberly.
So why don't you just start off and tell us a little bit about your pattern company? I know you like to do whimsical designs. Talk a little bit about how you got in the industry, and we are going to have a big trunk show.
Okay. I learned to cross stitch from my mom and then kind of stopped for a while but got back into it after college. Thought I'd like to try designing maybe a little bit after graduate school, and it didn't go anywhere. I bought the software. I couldn't make anything work. I didn't know what I was doing, and I just thought I'm not a cross stitch designer. So I put that aside, and then about a decade later, a friend of mine who designs knitting patterns and has a quilt shop and a yarn shop, she was like, "You should give it another try. You love cross stitch." And I thought, well, okay, I'll give it a shot. I do a lot of other fiber arts in addition to cross stitch, and enjoy all of them, and so they have kind of inspired my designs over the years. So I started with a design that was going to be a seasonal flag series as my first design, and I realized that didn't really work. So again, it was like trying stuff that didn't really work. And then one of the designs kind of morphed into the first design that I released that was called Spooky October. So once I let go of the idea of it being like a flag and just let it be a whole big piece, then things worked. And so that was my first design. That was about 6 years ago that I released that. And I've been designing ever since. I didn't really think about what would happen if people liked it. Like, I just released it hoping people would like it. And like, I didn't think, well, if people like it, can you do more? Mm-hmm. So then after people did like it, I was like, oh, I guess I need to keep trying to design more things now. So, but I've been able to do so, and it's been really a fun ride. So I really love designing cross stitch, and it's a fun way to express my creativity and help other people express their creativity when they stitch the designs and personalize them. And I always love when people personalize the designs and add their own little things to it.
How many patterns do you think you've published so far?
I'm somewhere in the 70s, I think, at this point.
Okay. So that would be like a little over 10 a year.
Yeah. I've, the first couple of years, it was just, smaller numbers, but I've, released more and more as I've gone on, and I just really enjoy spending time designing patterns. So I have kind of a backlog, actually.
And how many years have you gone to Nashville Needlework Market?
I think this was my 4th year this year. Okay. I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of how to do market, and it's not as hard to prepare or pack up to go anymore.
Mm-hmm. Do you drive there?
Yes. I live in Pennsylvania, and we take a couple days to drive. The friend that told me I should start designing is my helper at market.
Okay.
We drive together, and it's a really long drive.
Yeah. Is that like 2 days?
Yeah, it's a couple of days. Yep.
Yeah. So do you just wait and leave on Monday?
You mean afterwards?
Yeah.
We started, as of last year, staying an extra day to have fun. I can't go early because I'm a teacher, and so like I teach, okay. And then like as soon as my teaching is done, I leave, and it's spring break, and I go to Nashville. We stay an extra day to have fun, and we go get like massages, and we go shopping, and have a one fun day in Nashville, and then come back.
What grade do you teach?
I actually teach college. I teach Spanish. So lots of freshmen, but I do get other, sophomores and some juniors and seniors too.
Oh, that's interesting. My kids have all taken so many years, so you don't have to do it in college.
Yeah.
Or something. I'm like, why are y'all taking all this Spanish? They're like, we don't want to do it in college.
Sometimes you still get roped in.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't think that's the point of it, is to not learn. But anyway. Okay, so let's start the trunk show, and I'll just let you lead. We're going to go to one screen so that everybody can see the designs. And then as we go, if there's any questions, guys, if you can be specific on the pattern you're talking about. So when I ask her the question, I'm asking the correct question. And if you can, ask the question as soon as you can when we're on that piece, so she can like point to the questions that you guys have. That would be really helpful.
Okay, well, we're gonna start with some of my, I would say, very, very popular designs. And I'll start with, I put them in alphabetical order just because that was easiest for me.
Easier.
So I'm gonna, yeah, it's easier to keep track of them. This is a design I released this year, and it's called Autumn's Acorns. It has two versions. So both versions were stitched in silk. This was stitched on 32 count toasted coconut linen by Forbidden Fiber Company. I added a little bit of trim here. This is Rusty Gate by Lady Dot Creates. The other version is like a chocolate brown color. So you can be Team Rust or you can be Team Chocolate. Depends on your preference for fall decorations. And then this one was stitched in a Threadworks dark chocolate, and the red was stitched with Belle Soie Sonoran Sunset. And this just has all full crosses, so there's no specialty stitches. You can see in the pin pillow here, I added a little acorn charm, and there's some pins I added to the pin pillow. So I really love designing these. This is kind of a Quaker feel and is more traditional. It started out from a drawing that I had done in Procreate, and then kind of changed it up to be more of a traditional looking design for cross stitch.
And I think that one would be great as like a beginner or something to start with, because the stitch count is only 70 by 69. So you could probably do that pretty quick. So if someone's looking for something, you know, to start with, that would be a great one.
Yeah. Also, if you've never tried stitching with silk, this is these like one color projects are great for testing out silk stitching. Like it's a really nice little treat, and you don't have to invest a lot to try it out and see what you think of stitching with silk. But the pattern does include, all of my patterns can have a conversion to DMC if you'd rather use DMC.
Yeah, awesome. And just so everybody knows, the color of both of those, one is on the front and one is on the back. And the colors for both are listed.
Yes. Okay. So next up we have a Halloween design. I dearly love Halloween stitching and Halloween in general. So I love designing for Halloween, and this is Boo Hoo. So this is like a vintage Halloween style, which is one of my favorite styles. They're both pillows. These were stitched on 32 count dirty linen by Zweigart, and just using two colors of overdyed floss or DMC. You could use whatever you wanted for this. And then they have ruched ribbon around the outside edge. I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel, which is Misty Pursel, if you want to learn how to do the two color ruched ribbon. So there's a black and then there's an orange. So these are, again, full crosses. These would be great for a beginner, just the two colors, very simple and fun. This design actually started out as I was trying to design a pumpkin that would be shaped like a cat. And the design really didn't turn out, but it turned into these guys, Boo. And then I just loved him so much that I decided he needed a friend. And so Who came along as the friend. I do my own...
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I do my own pillow finishing, and I like to finish my pillows with a seam up the back. So I'll sew part of the way, leave an opening for stuffing, sew the rest of the way, sew the whole pillow together, and then stuff it from the center here. And then I will hand sew this section up using a ladder stitch. And I find that really works well for my finishing, just for the way that I like to do the finishing.
And I think you have a tutorial on your YouTube channel on how to do that also.
The ruched ribbon I do, yes.
Yeah. And most of the embellishments that you're using are by Lady Dot Creates. And just so everybody knows, she lists the exact color and the exact items she uses by Lady Dot Creates. So a lot of the embellishments you're going to see on the edges of the pillows, everything's listed in the pattern if you want to replicate it exactly.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have Christmas Bird Trio, which is a series of Christmas ornaments that I did. They're all in one pattern. So we have a wren and a blue jay. So the wren, they're all holding Christmas things or wearing them. So we've got a candy cane for the wren. And the blue jay is wearing a scarf. And then, oops, little chickadee is wearing a Santa hat. And these are super cute. I love doing ornament finishes. So this is a round finish with just some quilting fabric on the back, some trim from Hobby Lobby, and jingle bells. The fabric is one that I dyed. So just to mention briefly, when I started designing cross-stitch designs, I also dyed fabric. I don't dye fabric anymore because I don't have time, but since like 2020, all of my patterns have a suggested alternative listed on them if it was my fabric that I used at the time, so that you can, get a substitute for it. So I have a couple of ideas of substitutes for this one. I would use either Vintage Tiffany by Hand Dyed Fabrics by Stephanie, or you could use like Calypso from Picture This Plus. Any kind of warm tone blue that shows white well for the snowflakes would be good.
And so your conversion for this one, for Kathy's question, is Picture This Plus Calypso would be a good alternative color.
Yep, or Vintage Tiffany from Hand Dyed Fabrics by Stephanie. So a couple different options.
Yep, and all of that, just so you guys know, is all of it's on the back of the pattern, so it's really easy to follow what she did.
And if it was a pattern that was pre-2020 and you're not sure, you can always contact me and I will tell you what I would suggest as a substitute. There aren't that many patterns pre-2020, but there are some. So, okay. Comfort and Joy is next. Another pillow. I love doing pillows. And so this is a tufted titmouse with a poinsettia, and it's in an urn. I was just thinking at the time, this was around the time of COVID, and I was thinking of Christmas being, like a joyful time and taking comfort in that time of year, and the beauty of that time of year. And I wanted to design something that felt like peaceful and comforting. So this palette of colors felt that to me. This one's all in DMC, and I stitched this one on a 40 count fabric that I dyed, which is called Sparrow. I would suggest Vintage Country Mocha as a substitution for this. It's a really good match. And then I used mini pom-pom trim from Lady Dot Creates. It's Brick House. And you do not have to stitch this on 40 count just because I did. I just wanted to stitch. I sometimes do enjoy stitching on 40 count. Most of my designs are on 32 count, however. And never feel like you have to stitch on linen just because I did or my model stitcher did. You can use other fabrics for sure.
So can you show the back of that pillow?
Yes.
And
so
then
again, just another.
We have lots of requests for you to do a pillow tutorial on your YouTube channel with that method, because everyone is saying how it's so rectangular and so straight and so flat.
Okay. I've been thinking about doing that, so it sounds like I should.
Yeah.
The key to getting it flat is to use a steam iron and really give it some good steam and put some pressure on. But yes, I can definitely do a tutorial. Okay. So now we have Enchanted Quaker, which is a huge one. And I love this design so much. Okay, let me see if I can turn myself correctly and get it all on screen. Okay, there we go. So, I have seen a few different Halloween Quakers out there, and I love them all, but I just wanted to do my own. So I wasn't sure exactly how I would do it because, it's hard to get the right spacing on a Quaker to have the motifs look really balanced. So that was a challenge with this one. But I really enjoyed designing it and putting all the little fun motifs in.
Do you want to go into some of the specialty stitches on this one?
So there really aren't, oh my gosh, here we go. There really aren't specialty stitches per se. Let me back up here.
I know
There's
it's
just a little bit of back
backwards.
stitching. I know. It's gonna take me like the whole video, and I'll get it at the end probably. Okay, so there's just some back stitching and long stitching in the spider, but all of the other stitches in this one are full cross stitches. So it's pretty straightforward to stitch this one. This uses black coffee, which is one of my favorite classic Colorworks colors. I love black coffee because it's like a really pretty blackish blue color. And this is stitched on Vintage Stormy Night by Zweigart. And I use 32 count for this one. So I really, really love this. And this is a really popular design. I've actually seen a lot of people are starting to stitch this one, which is really cool. And I have seen people stitch it with multiple colors. So if that's something you're interested in, you might try going to Instagram and looking for like Enchanted Quaker or Enchanted Quaker Sal to see what other people are doing with this, because there is some inspiration there for sure.
That would be really pretty with the Belle Soie black also.
Yes, yes, it would. Like Old Crow, which is a black, that would be a nice one for sure. Yeah.
So did you frame that one yourself?
I have my stuff framed at a local shop. Oh my gosh. Here we go again. I sometimes have done my own stretching. I would say like my framer's got an amazing selection of frames, but he's not the best at stretching.
Right.
But I don't really have time to stretch. So basically I let him stretch it. And then if he doesn't do it to my standards, I just take the back off and tweak it.
Do you put glass
And then it's
on
straighter.
the front?
I don't.
Okay.
So my thought about it is pretty much that most of my designs are seasonal and are only out for like 3 months on display. But if I have something that's going to be out like all year, then I would be more likely to put glass on it. So I do have a few pieces that have glass, but I rarely put glass on things. I do like being able to see them, the stitches close up really easily. So generally I don't use glass.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't.
I agree.
Yeah.
And you know, anytime I go into like a cross stitch shop, they're not using glass. I mean, it's just, it's nice to have if you're going to have like light on it, especially if you're going to have direct or some indirect sunlight. You know, you might want museum glass for something. But otherwise, if it's just like pretty safe in a good spot and it's not going to be out all the time, I don't think you need it. Okay, so next up we have Jingle Jolly Joy. Oh, I went a little bit out of order here, I see. I missed my first page. Well, let me put that on hold. Let me go back to the beginning. Okay, so I have a few bird designs that I missed. So this is a bluebird salute. So we've got a little patriotic design. Sorry guys for going out of order here.
That's okay.
So this is a really cute little pillow that I did. This one's a 40 count design. Again, you could stitch it on a different count. You don't have to use linen. I used soft porcelain. My recommended substitute for soft porcelain would be, let's see, Picture This plus sand is what I would suggest to use instead. This particular ribbon was a vintage one in my stash, so this one isn't commercially available, but you could look for like a similar blue. Lady Dot Creates has a bunch. This one has beading on it, so sometimes I do put beading on my pillows.
That's really cute.
Thanks. Yeah. Vanna Pfeiffer has a really good tutorial about doing ruched ribbon with beads, and I love incorporating them. I use size 11 seed beads. I like the ones that are more metallic looking. I feel like they show up nicely with the ribbon.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually look for ones that are kind of a metallic color. And so this design has bunting on it because I love bunting, and there's fireworks and little stars, and it's just a really fun little design. So this is part of a series I did, a bird series. The next one that I'm going to show from that same series is called A Robin's Discovery. And so This one would be a spring or Easter design. And what the robin has discovered is that the Easter bunny is stealing its eggs. So that's the story behind this. I love the spring flowers and the butterfly in this one. I love bleeding hearts, so I incorporated those. Really fun design to do. This one uses Lady Dot Creates ribbon. This one's Caribe. And you can see the beads again.
And the beads, who are the beads by?
I get them all over the place. Like Miyuki is like a Japanese brand, I think. But Mill Hill has good beads too, so I think you can get anything. You would just want to look for like size 11 seed beads.
And all of these that you're showing right now, they're all about the same size.
Yeah, they're not like identical, but
Yeah,
they
they're
are
not
approximately
exact,
the
but
same
they're
size. Yep.
Really close.
Yep. Exactly. So these are all on soft porcelain, including this one. This is a Turkey's Thanks. And I just love how this turned out. It was interesting trying to make a turkey look cute.
Yes.
Because I like things to be cute, and turkeys, they can be. I used to have turkeys for a while as a kid in 4-H. And the Tom, if I had a red coat, and he would always attack me.
Oh my
I have
gosh.
mixed feelings about them. I grew up on a farm. But I do enjoy them, especially seeing wild turkeys. And so this one was kind of an interesting one to design, trying to get all the plumage to show up well and you know, make it look detailed enough yet cute. So again, we have the ruched ribbon with the beads, and this is another ribbon from Lady Dot Creates. This is Rusty Gate, which is one that I really like. So there are...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to mention real quick that you have a video on that, but also you have listed Vonna Pfeiffer's YouTube tutorial finishing. It's called Tuck Pillow with Ruffed Ruched Ribbon and Beading. So
Yes,
if
yeah.
people join late, they don't know, but there's 2 tutorials out there. So if y'all are wanting to know how to do that, we'll link to her video below.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I think that's the set on this. Let's see. One more. I didn't talk about All Hallows Eve, so let's talk about that. And then I've got my designs all on like layers of trays, so I can fit them all on my table. So this is All Hallows Eve. This was inspired by seeing jack-o'-lanterns stacked and staggered. So I don't know if you've seen this before, but sometimes people will take like a fence post, and then they'll take Halloween candy buckets and they'll stack them staggered and make them into like planters. And it's super cute. And that was the idea for this design, was just like thinking about, you know, having staggered, stacked jack-o'-lanterns. And I would say this one's kind of a like traditional yet cute style design. This was stitched on Vintage Country Mocha 32 count linen. I really love how this came out. I love the mischievous cat who's making his way over towards the bird. I love doing moons with faces on them. And as I said, I really love Halloween. So this was a fun one to design. All full crosses on this one. There's no back stitching.
And I noticed a lot of your font is really similar. Do you use the same font throughout, or do you change it per pattern?
I think it's just my style of writing fonts. I always make new fonts whenever I do a design, but it's kind of like based on my handwriting, I guess. So that's probably why it looks pretty similar most of the time. So I don't intentionally reuse it, but I think I just have like a style that kind of keeps coming out again and again.
Right. I just wanted to ask that because a lot of people that's one of the questions we get a lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. So let's do Jingle Jolly Joy. So this is a Christmas design that was inspired by a creativity challenge. And at Christmas time, one of them was like reindeer, Santa, snowman. And I started with the reindeer, and I thought, oh, I should just keep going with the challenge, but make them all look like, you know, similar, like they go together. And it was like a creativity challenge, but I ended up turning it into a cross-stitch design. So we do have some Um, some back stitching and long stitching here in the lettering. All of the little sections start with the same letter, so jingle, jolly, and joy. So it's really, really cute, really fun. I've seen people finish this as like a quilted wall hanging, as separate ornaments. And this is a series, so there are 3 other designs in this series. I'll be showing one more of them. But they're all identical in size, and they all share a letter, either the first letter or the last letter. This was stitched on Opulence, which is a fabric I used to dye, and I would recommend Picture This Plus Relic as a substitute for it. And I wanted to show you like an alternative finish you could do, which is, I got a little carried away. I love things stitched over one because I like things that are tiny and cute. And so I made little ornaments out of them stitched over one on 32 count Vintage Country Mocha. And this is Lugana. And then turn them into little ornaments. I just used a ticking fabric and added some jingle bells. And then this is a mini pom-pom trim from Lady Dot Creates again in the brick house. So I did all 3 of them. So there's lots of possibilities of ways to finish these. You don't have to just do it the way that I did. Please feel free to be creative.
And those are on the back of the pattern, just so you guys know.
Yes.
Just, you know,
Thank you.
If you're looking at the pattern, the framed one is on the front and the ornaments are on the back.
Thank you. Okay, and then let's talk about Stitcher. I love doing stitching themed designs. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm also a big fan of red and red silk. So, and also I love doing designs that incorporate like vintage mother of pearl buttons. I collect them. You can see that way. There we go. You can see I've got a jar of buttons. So I love collecting buttons, especially the mother of pearl ones. This one is stitched on Sparrow. So again, I would use Vintage Country Mocha instead. And this is a silk design. It's pomegranate from Gloriana. So super cute. I love this chunky frame because it can stand up on its own. It's a really nice frame. So sometimes it's fun to get like a chunkier frame to just have it stand up straight. But this would be super cute too as a pillow. One of the fun things about this design is the spool of thread. So there's just some diagonal stitches there and a little bit of thread coming off to the needle there. So this is a really fun and cute one.
And do you get your buttons, do you buy those like at thrift shops or?
Yeah, I get them when I go out antique shopping or at yard sales. And sometimes I buy them on Etsy, like if I see like a good selection or there's something fancy that I want to try. Etsy's a good source. eBay, anything like that.
Okay.
So next I'd like to talk about my gathering series. This is one of my, this is my most popular series, and it's a really fun series. People are always telling me how much they love stitching it, which is super cool because I loved it too, and I love designing it, and I'm so glad people enjoy it. So all of these designs in this series are going to be exactly the same size. They all feature at least one bird. And originally I had stitched them on my fabric, which was Sparrow, but since I'm not dyeing fabric anymore, I'm now stitching them on Vintage Country Mocha as a substitute, which is, like I said, a really good match. And I, again, am incorporating the Vintage Mother of Pearl buttons, but I'll include in the pattern like a version without the buttons so you can see what it looks like if you want to leave the buttons off. Obviously, if you were stitching on like a higher count fabric, you'd either have to get smaller buttons or leave them off because I think it could be tricky. So it just depends on what you want to do. So this is gathering acorns, and you can see that the bird and his little squirrel friend are gathering acorns. This was stitched in Belle Soie Paprika. So again, if you're looking for a chance to jump into silk floss, this is a way you could do that. And all of these are finished with ruched ribbon with the beads. Let me check which one this was. I didn't make a note of it, but I think it might be Rusty Gate. I'm not sure. It's on the pattern.
Yeah, it's Grubby Gate from Lady Dog
Oh, Grubby
Creates.
Gate.
Grubby Gate.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So she has Rusty Gate and Grubby Gate, and Grubby Gate would just be grubbier. Okay, this is Gathering Berries. This is actually where the series started. I had just wanted to do a design with strawberries and birds. I love strawberries. I love strawberry season and picking strawberries. So a lot of these designs in this series are kind of about things that I love in nature. So this has two birds. There's a little tiny bit of back stitching in the strawberry stem, but otherwise it's all full crosses. This is Cranberry from Belle Soie. And I'm not sure. Sorry, Kimberly. I didn't remember to write down the trims on these. I don't know if you can check.
Oh, yeah, I can read them. Chianti plus Dublin. Wait, no. Chianti from Lady Dog
Chianti.
Creates.
Okay, yeah, cool. Thank you.
And then show the back, because everybody's loving the back of your pillows.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody loves that.
I just try to pick something. One tip I will give, I usually try to pick a back color that one kind of coordinates with the front, but also is similar to whatever trim I'm putting on, so that not so much with the ribbon, it's not really going to show, but if you're doing like a mini pom-pom trim, sometimes your stitching thread as you're sewing it on can show, and so if you match your backing close to what your trim is, and then your sewing thread matches, you won't really see it so much. So that's a tip for finishing. Okay, so next up we have Gathering Clover. And I love finding four-leaf clover. I don't know if I just have a talent for it, but I can find them everywhere. So actually, about a month ago, I was going for a walk and I found this patch that was like filled with four-leaf clover and even one five-leaf clover. And I was really excited about that. So this is about how much I love finding four-leaf clovers and good luck. And, you know, it's kind of a fun design for March, but also just kind of any time of the year. It's kind of a fun spring or summer design about gardening and plants.
And that trim is Sequoia from Lady Dog Creates.
Thank you. Thank you. And the color for the floss is collard greens from Belle Soie. All of these are Belle Soie flosses for this series. Another tip I'll give about pillow finishing, since I talked about how I do a seam up the center, is like to do your seam whatever is the longest dimension of your pillow. So if your pillow is like a rectangle, then I would put the seam on going parallel to that long side. That makes it easier. You can leave the opening to get the stuffing in all the corners. With this design, it obviously wouldn't matter since it's a square, but if you were doing something rectangular, that would make your life easier.
Everyone's wanting to know, how do you get your pillows so thin and flat?
Well, this is a tip I learned from Vanna Pfeiffer. You stuff them very, very full, and then you would turn them, once you've stuffed and sewn it up and finished it, you turn it over face down, and then you're going to use a lot of steam and push down on the pillow, and it ends up kind of
flattening.
It makes the polyfills settle in more and kind of mesh together, and then it's nice and flat. So get it really, really well stuffed first, finish it all up, and then flatten it. And don't be afraid to push down. Like I literally push down on it when I'm giving it shots of steam.
That's a great tip because I had no idea. I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it works
too.
so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vanna Pfeiffer's tutorials are amazing. So if you have not checked them out, she is a great resource. She's been doing tutorials for forever. Like she used to do them on her blog. She does them on her YouTube channel. Learned a lot from her. Learned a lot from like other people and just from like sewing, because I do some sewing and that has helped too. So actually the seam up the back, the way that I do it, which I can explain, that's not something Vanna does, but I learned about how to do it the way that I do it from like a bag sewing tutorial, like a way to sew it up so that it's easy to fold the seam allowance under when you're doing the hand sewing. So yeah, like just doing a lot of different projects, I guess, has helped me be like a more confident finisher. This one is Gathering Honey, and I love this design so much. I just knew I wanted to do a bee design, and I wasn't sure if I was going to have them on like a honey pot or like a little apiary beehive, but in the end, I decided that I made 2 versions of this pillow, actually. I designed 2 versions, and then I decided this was the better version. And that's not unusual for me to do multiple versions of something and like look at them together and try to decide which one I like the best. So like that was something I learned early on in designing that's kind of a time saver, is not to delete your work. So
Yeah.
like don't make a change, like do something and then copy it and paste it next to itself and then make the tweak, so that if you actually liked the original thing you did better, you don't have to go back and redo it. It's just right there. And that way you can kind of compare them. And so I'll always have like multiple versions of a design or some part of a design going, trying to figure out what looks best. And so I learned the hard way for a while there when I would delete what I had done. And then I was like, no, actually that was better.
It's funny. It's like you hit the undo, and then sometimes you can't undo.
Exactly. You can only undo so far. You're right. This one is Teddy Bear for the Belle Soie. And Kimberly, can you let them know what the ribbon is?
Yeah, it is rayon ribbon trim and honeycomb by Lady
Oh, perfect.
Creates.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. And there's the back. I have a pretty good stash of quilting fabric, which is really helpful for finishing cross stitch. Next up is, I would say that of this series, the 2 most popular ones are Gathering Berries, and then this one, which is Gathering Stitches. There we go. So, you know, I love making stitching themed designs. It was bound to happen that the birds would be gathering stitches. This one has more specialty type stitches in it. It has some back stitches and long stitches. You can see the diagonal stitches there on the spool. And so one bird is about to grab the pin out of the pin cushion, and the other one is stitching a heart. And so the crosses in the heart are just like extra large cross stitches over more threads with like a single strand. And there's a thimble, and I love scissors, so whenever I do a stitching design, I usually try to incorporate scissors and a pin cushion, a tomato pin cushion, because I love doing that. This was stitched with Sister Scarlet. I'm not remembering the ribbon.
Chianti.
Is it Chianti again? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And do you have any tips on your French knots? They look so good on the pins. How do you do those?
Oh, those are actually just cross stitches. They're actually not even French knots. I don't know if I've ever used French knots in my designs, actually.
They look
Now that
like
I think
French
about it, it's kind of
knots.
weird. They do from far. You're right. Yeah, I mean, now that I'm looking at them on the screen, they do look like it. But yeah, they're actually just cross stitches.
Even better.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I know. French knots are tricky. I know. Okay, now we have Gathering Snowflakes. This one was really fun to design. And the birds are like a little bit smaller and chubbier in this one, which I think is super cute. And so the snowman is kind of their landing place, and then they are going to gather the snowflakes. This one uses Belle Soie Mer Bleu. And again, I'm going to have to ask for your help, Kimberly, on the trim.
It is Union.
Oh, yes. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. There's the back. And this is Gathering Violets, which was released this year. So if you love violets and you love purple, this is the perfect design for you. So got the little, I'm imagining them on like a potting bench or something, you know, and they're going to sneak some violets away. It was fun to add the lettering on this one. I don't usually put lettering on, but for this one, I just had to. This one's all full crosses. And it's stitched in Belle Soie Boys and Beauty. And I think the trim is Wizard. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I got one. I got one right.
The trick is, how do you say the words? You know, that's always my trick.
I know.
It's always the hard words.
I know. And sometimes because I learned Spanish pronunciation more recently, I'll like sound things out, like words I don't know in English. I'll sound them out like they're in Spanish, which doesn't work. So that was my gathering series. I hope that you enjoyed it. It's kind of an ongoing series, so like I don't necessarily have something planned for every year, but I do have other ideas of of designs I could do in the future. So I'll just kind of keep continuing on with that as I get inspired and find the right things to do. So next I just want to show some of my like most recent releases. I'm gonna move this tray of patterns or models. Okay, so this is a Valentine's design. This is called Sweet Love. Super cute and sweet and simple, just celebrating love. So we have two birds that are gazing into each other's eyes, and we have sweet, we have X's and O's across the side, a heart with an arrow going through it. And this was stitched on Caramel by Seraphim Hand-Dyed Fabrics. And it uses 4 different colors of NPI silk. So this was my first time using NPI in a design. I've been wanting to use their floss for a while, and they're great to work with also. We have some really wonderful floss companies, and I love them all. They're amazing. Next up, we have American Eagle coverlet. So if you're working on patriotic designs, this might be right up your alley for this time of year. This was inspired by weaving. So in addition to cross stitch, I do a lot of other hobbies. As I mentioned, I quilt and sew and knit and crochet, and I weave. And so I had seen weaving, some weaving coverlets that had eagles on them. It kind of inspired me to do this design in a more traditional style. And then the motifs there, that's like a one you'd find in like Overshot. This motif you could see in knitting or weaving. And then this was just a motif I came up with that I thought kind of matched. I really like this design. It's kind of more of a traditional one. This one's stitched all in Weeks floss, and it's on 32 count cappuccino linen from Fiber on a Whim.
And then just so everybody knows, all of her patterns give DMC thread choices. So she tells you what she stitches in, but then she also gives you DMC thread choices.
Yes. Yep, definitely. I always pick those out for people in case they want to use DMC. Also, just in case you want to do your own conversion, it helps to have a place to start with.
Yeah, that makes sense, because a lot of times you can Google, like, you know, what I like, you know, you could Google something like convert DMC 347, what is the closest classic color works or something. And it's going to give you a more accurate result if you start with the DMC than if you started with a dyed.
Yeah, especially because, you know, well, even with DMC, I found that some like dye lots can change over time, but DMC is pretty consistent. So if you have like the DMC conversion for something I used, you know, I've been designing that long, okay, we'll say 6 years ago, maybe that color looks a little bit different now, but if you have the DMC, it's like a little bit easier to know kind of where to go. Whereas, you know, the color may have shifted, dyes change over time. Like sometimes we can't get dyes anymore. So this is Liberty, Glory, Unity. So this is a companion to Jingle Jolly Joy. They're the same size, and in this case, they share the same. They share the same last letter, which is a Y. So we have the Statue of Liberty, and we have Old Glory, the flag, and then we have the. Oops, I'm still not quite getting this. The Great Seal. So again, these letters are just back stitched and long stitched.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is it's the way that you did the font. It kind of looks like there's knots at the end, but there's not. It's just the look of the font, because that was one of the things I looked at this morning, and it looks like you did the work, but you didn't have to, which is really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So again, like you could do these as little individual pillows. You could do them as ornaments. So lots of possibilities for different ways to do these. I like to do some designs that can be separated out in case you want to, you know, tweak it and do it a little bit differently. So this series was really fun for that. And there's 2 more designs in it. There's a Halloween and a Easter spring one that are all, again, the same size and could be stitched together or separately.
And you could use that same idea that you had on the other one to make them as ornaments or,
Yeah,
individual.
exactly. So like if you have a seasonal tree, you could do any of the designs from the series, finish them as ornaments, and just change it out every season on your tree. I know a lot of people do have seasonal trees, which is really cool. This is Santa Stack. And this was a design. Now we're kind of getting into some of my designing on an iPad. So when I started out designing, I was mostly working with pencil and paper or just going straight into the design software. I use MacStitch because I have Apple computers. And then more recently, I got into using Procreate on my iPad. And it's just an app that you can draw in, but it's got a lot of like really nice features, and I really enjoy using it. Using it has sped up my design process when I do use it because I can just sketch something out quickly and move things around. I never really do full designs. I'm just kind of trying to figure out like what do I want and where do I want it to go? What size do I want it to be? And then I can go into the cross-stitch software and get it done much faster. But sometimes I also like to just play around and not have a plan. And so let serendipity happen. So it just depends. But in this case, I was taking some classes on like illustration, and so I actually did do this like fully illustrated as a greeting card with Santa on top of two reindeers. There was a reindeer facing one way and the other way. And I asked people if they'd be interested in having it as a cross-stitch design, and they said yes. So I did turn it into a cross-stitch design. I just made it a little bit smaller by removing one of the deer. You can see his candy cane is, oh man. His candy cane is backstitched.
And the
so there's
this
a little
one,
bit of
I will say, has been, out of all the patterns you've done, this has been the one that has been the most popular with Fat Quarter Shop customers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's so cool.
And
yeah,
his
very
little,
cool. So
little eyelashes, those are just back stitches.
Yes. And if you don't want to do the back stitching of the eyelashes, you could also just do the lines for his eyes closed, and that looks good too. Like, because I stitched it that way first and then added the eyelashes, like I can tell you that it looks good if you don't add the eyelashes, if you want to just do the lines for the eyes. And then there's a little bit of stitching in the mouth of the reindeer. And then the last one I have to show today is called Wintergreen Christmas. And so this was another situation where I was designing in Procreate. So I like to give myself challenges because I guess I'm like weird, but I decided I wanted to try to illustrate like a sticker sheet of package gift tags, like stickers you put on, like to from stickers for Christmas. And so I had like reindeer and I had Santa and other different things. And then I just liked these so much that I was like, I have to turn them into cross stitch if I can. And so that's what I did. So I don't always use Procreate. Like I said, sometimes I just design in the MacStitch software itself, but there's a couple ways that you could take an image from Procreate. You can put it behind your canvas and kind of trace over what you drew, or you can just kind of look at what you drew and redraw it. And that's what I do most of the time, but once in a while I'll trace it to get the general outline. You can also import your picture into the software, but I find that it's too many colors. It doesn't tend to turn out as well as if I just do it myself. So I don't usually let the software do it for me.
And do you want to talk about how in the pattern there's an ornament, there's a template for the oval ornament and for all of the holly leaves?
Yeah, thank you. So I did make templates and I sized them for 4 different fabric counts. So they're nested in the pattern, as well as the holly leaves. So you'd use the template to make the front and the back, and then you'd use the template to make the holly leaves, and then you can sew on your jingle bells, and then this is just baker's twine. But yes, I did make templates for different sizes so that it doesn't matter what fabric count you're working on. This was a 32 count. This was soft C again. And so again, I would use Calypso by Picture This Plus or Vintage Tiffany from Hand-Dyed Fabrics by Stephanie. So we have a reindeer, and we have the Jolly Santa, and then we have the peaceful pine trees forest. One question that someone sent to me when I let everyone know that I would be on the Fat Quarter Shop's live stream, she asked how I choose the symbols for my charts. So my charts are in black and white, and I don't know exactly how other designers choose the symbols. I'm limited by what the software offers, and honestly, I think it's kind of a limited selection. So basically, when I'm designing, I try to think of like, what's the darkest color, and I usually make that the black square, especially if it's black, and then what's the lightest colors, which is usually white or cream, and then I make that like 2 dots or an equals sign. There's no 1 dot available in my software, so I can't use that. Like, that's kind of a common color or a common symbol for white. And I try to kind of base my symbols on like how dark or light something is and try to match that, especially since it's in black and white. But I think it's a really tricky thing, because when you're designing it, you might think the symbols look differently, but once you print them out, they might not look different enough. And especially if you're not stitching the design yourself, if you're having a model stitcher help, which I do a lot, you have to be really aware of that. And I always ask my model stitchers, like, if any symbols look too similar, let me know, because I'll change them. But yeah, so definitely it's tricky, and you have to be, so I try to be very aware of like, does a symbol look at all like another symbol? Hopefully not, but like circles and rounded shapes can kind of be similar. I think it's challenging, and obviously the more colors you have in the design, the more challenging it gets.
Right. And did you want to show Counting is Hard? I think it's behind you.
Yeah, sure. So this is Counting is Hard.
All of us can relate to that.
Yes, it is. So, I mean, this is really true for me. And I think I was like talking to someone on Instagram, commenting on their post and saying how counting is hard. And I was like, I should make that a design, because it's true. I mean, we all struggle. So the idea here, I kind of got the idea in like a flash of inspiration. Like literally I saw like a flash in my brain of like, the bird stitching. Mm-hmm. And so the idea here is that the bird, is missing a stitch down at the bottom here. Wrong way. Okay. Down there. So that's where the counting is hard. And then you can see the bird is counting. So yeah, it messed up one of the stitches already. And that's why it's saying counting is hard. Then we have to have the seam ripper, and the seam ripper is underlining the word hard, right? Like counting is hard. Yeah, this was a super fun one to design. And I had the idea, like I said, like kind of in a flash, and it was really just a question of the layout that took me a little bit of time to figure out. Most of my designs do not come to me in flashes of inspiration. When I get lucky, and they do, I'm very grateful to the universe, but it doesn't happen that often. A lot of times I'll just have like a word or a general idea that I kind of write down, and then I might just play around drawing it out and see if I can come up with something. So I have like a list of ideas and a notes app in my phone. Every time someone suggests something, I'm like, oh yeah, or some idea comes into my head. Like I've got a list going of gathering design possibilities, and I keep adding to that. So yeah, it's really kind of fun to keep track of the ideas. This one has some diagonal long stitches on the bobbin here, which you could do if you feel comfortable, and if you don't feel comfortable, you could just leave it with the cross stitches underneath and not do those.
Yeah, so basically she just has cross stitch and then like a big long back stitch on the top, mm-hmm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And this one's all in DMC. I usually do like one design a year that's all in DMC. I just think it's fun to do one each year like that, so this was the one. And this was stitched on Sparrow, so again, the substitute would be Vintage Country Mocha.
And on the back of this pattern, there's a really cute drum that you turned this into. It's like a circle drum, and it's tall.
Yeah, that was, that's another really cute option. So Faye Rigsby did that drum finish for me. I do like any pillow finishes or ornament finishes I do myself, and then the framing is done by my local framer. But if it's drum finishes, Faye Rigsby has done some amazing finishes. She's done a couple pillow finishes for me too. And then Helen Daly is a friend of mine, and she doesn't like finish for everyone. I just am lucky that I'm good friends with her and I can call in a favor now and then.
Yeah.
so she'll finish some drums for me here and there too. So I have not attempted the drum finish myself yet.
Yeah, I haven't either. I think it's on like Denise and I's list, but it just keeps going to the next year and the next year. We're so scared to do it.
I know. It's the same for me. I keep kind of putting it off.
I'm not going to even try. Like, I think I would just totally ruin it. One question we did have from all the patterns you showed is on the Santa stack, if you could give a 14 count fabric recommendation for that one. Like, what fabric do you think would work with that one?
Well, that was honey blush linen, and as far as I know, Forbidden Fiber Company would dye that in Ada as well, or Lugana. So I think you could still get that fabric, but otherwise, it just needs to be something that will show white well enough. Yeah. Like probably a warm toned, like cream color. Yeah.
I feel like the fiber on a whim, the cream fiber on a whim might work too. Like, cause that's it's pretty creamy. So just looking at it, I mean, I could be wrong, but that seems like a good match to me.
Yeah. So there's a lot of amazing fabric out there now.
Yeah. So many, there's way too many options. How did you come up with the name of your company?
Well, actually, weirdly enough, it started as a weaving company because I mentioned I was weaving. So I was doing like some custom woven towels, and then I decided to start just selling some. And so Luminous was really about like how I like to use like brighter colors in all of my projects, really. And then fiber arts in general, just because my friend was like, well, you might do other stuff than weaving at some point. And so it was kind of the vague idea that somehow transitioned into cross-stitch designing within like a year of starting to do more of like the weaving stuff. So the weaving has gone by the wayside. I do weave, but just for fun really at this point.
And then what percentage do you think that you stitch your pieces versus having model stitchers?
Oh, at this point, it's mostly model stitchers helping me, just to save time. It's been really helpful having them, and I have like 5 model stitchers now. They're all amazing and so helpful, and I'm like, I mean, I couldn't do this without them. So yeah, I really appreciate them.
And I think with model stitchers, it's good because it's like a second eye.
Yes.
Like, oh, that might look, they might say, oh, that looks funny, or, it might look good to us. But then if somebody else sees it, they're like, okay, that doesn't. So it's always like I feel like it's better to have a model stitcher almost to catch any little tiny things.
Yeah. And, the thing that's hard about working with model stitchers is not them, it's me, that I will choose colors and then I can't always tell that they're actually going to be the right ones. And so usually I have to at least like test stitch some sections of a design, unless it's like real, if it's a one color design, I pretty much know, like, here you go. But if it's like multiple colors and I haven't got it quite dialed in, I have to do a little bit of test stitching in some different places and then send it off to be finished by someone else once I've, made sure that the colors are going to work together. So that's actually what I'm in the process of doing right now. I'm working on a Halloween model, and I'm just putting in some spot colors here and there to make sure that they're good, and then I'll be reaching out to one of my model stitchers to help me finish it.
Can you talk about, this is one thing that I think would be really interesting. I've used Belsois and I've used NPI silks. Those are the only 2 silks I've used, but can you talk about the difference in the 2 and how one is solid, one is not? Just talk a little bit about those for people who haven't used them.
Yeah, so NPI, as you mentioned, is like a solid color of silk. Really nice, really smooth. I mean, all silk is really, honestly, really nice, really smooth. It's packaged a little bit differently, smaller skeins, and like the Belsois is 12 strands per like yard length, and that can be more tonal. Then there's Threadworks, which I've been working with a little bit lately, and they use their base as a Veriswa. I think that if I remember correctly, that has 7 strands. So, if you were using 2 strands at a time, I guess you pull off the 7th strand, save it, and then when you had 7 strands for the next one, you save it and put them together for 2 strands. I don't really worry when I stitch about like crossing each X. If it's like an over dyed floss, I don't worry about like crossing each X. I find that I actually don't do that like anymore at all. So I think that still works with that kind of a silk situation. Gloriana silk is really beautiful. That tends to be a more subtle variation. That's maybe the most subtle of the ones that's not solid. So I've worked with a few different silk companies at this point, and they're all really lovely. They just have different ways of putting their skeins together. With the Gloriana, it comes, and this is true of like many of the silks actually, they might come like all together, like kind of like Weeks floss, and you have to like cut it apart yourself rather than like the Belle Soie is already cut for you. But I mean, you can just cut it in yard lengths or whatever you want. That's really flexible. Or you can buy one of those, people on Etsy sell them, those like stick things that have like indentations. Like they actually remind me of, yeah. They remind me of weaving shuttles, actually. It's kind of funny. But you can wrap them and cut the ends. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your YouTube channel and what kind of videos you have on there?
Yeah. So I do some tutorials, and not just like finishing tutorials. I've done some tutorials about other things like how to finish a project when you don't know how to finish a project. Like, what do you do? What are the steps so that you can get something done? Or like how to decorate. I love decorating for the holidays, and you can see I've got like a sewing, stitching theme going on behind me with a bunch of vintage stuff. And so I talk about like, ways to light things and place things so that they look nice, and color schemes and things like that. I have videos that are about like new releases. Sometimes I have videos that are about like personal stitching and other projects. So sometimes you might see like a quilt that I finished, or a Busilla kit where I made an ornament, or something. I do a lot of, in the winter, I like to do tiny ornaments that are knit. So sometimes little knitted ornaments will pop up in the videos. So it's kind of a cross stitch focus, but with a little bit of other fiber arts thrown in, and just kind of a mix of different things depending. I like to do some tutorials because I like to help people, and I appreciate all the amazing content that's out there that's helped me. So I like to try to give back by making some helpful videos too.
So definitely out of all the questions, it's how do you get those pillows flat? I know you talked about it, but then also you put, did you say polyfill is what you put in there? Okay. So I would tell everybody, go watch that video. We will figure out exactly what video she shows it on and link to it, because we've gotten like 30 questions about the pillows.
Okay. Yes, get I think it's the Mountain Mist polyfill. That's what Vonna recommends, and it really does make a difference. I didn't really think at first when she said that it really, she said it's this one, and I'm like, it can't make that much of a difference. It actually does. She's right. I was wrong.
Right.
It makes a difference which one, because I've used other polyfills and it's not the same. So that one is really, really good for finishing, and you just use a chopstick to fill the corners. And there's a tip that Helen D has about putting yarn in the corners of your pillow before you put in the filling, because when you iron it, it shrinks down and flattens, and so some of that stuffing you put in the corners actually kind of edges back out, and so your corners can get kind of floppy. And so I always wrap some yarn up like Helen suggested and put it in all the corners now first before I put the polyfill in, and that helps keep the corners a little bit plumper.
Like an acrylic yarn or cotton yarn?
I use what I have, which can be anything, but in my case, it happens to be alpaca at the moment, but I think you can probably use anything.
Yeah.
Just have some alpaca lying around, so that's what I'm using.
And someone's asking about the fabric you use on the back of your pillows. I'm assuming that's probably left over from your stash of quilts, or?
Yeah, exactly. Although I do go shopping now, I tend to like I look for things, you know, like this that are like if you're looking for what is a good quilting fabric to buy for your cross stitch finishing, I tend to think you want it to be either like let's see if I can grab one here. Is this, yeah, so like this where it's like
Solid.
there we go. Like it's two-tone and it's a nice like matching color. Or like something that's not gonna be too distracting, but of course this is on the back. So dots, I like things that are small prints tend to be good. You know, if you're gonna put there's times when I finish things with quilt fabric on the front too, like next to the design, and you just want it to not like detract. So I think like it should be small scale, not too busy kind of stuff. But yeah, this is just from my quilting stash, but I do go looking for fabric now specifically to finish my designs as well. So now that I kind of know what my color palette is, I'll look for certain things to fill any gaps I have in my stash that kind of coordinate with the colors I tend to use.
What type of quilts do you usually make?
What do you mean?
Like, do you like to do pieced quilts? Do you like to do applique?
Yeah, more pieced. I've tried doing applique, but I get bored or I'm lazy. I don't know. I get stopped in the middle and I don't finish. So
Yeah.
I have like I have two applique quilts. I did this crazy applique quilt that was like a tile quilt. There was this book out called The Tile Quilt Revival. And it's like all these pieces like meshed together, and that was like a crazy project that I did actually finish, but I don't do I do some wool applique here and there, but it's mostly pieced quilts. The last quilt I finished was Halo by Jen Kingwell, which was quite a project. You know, it's like there's templates and curve piecing and it was like fussy cutting and oh my gosh, yeah, it took me like 5 years of on and off working on it to get it done. 5 or 7, one or the other. I don't know, a long time.
Too long, right?
Too long, yes.
Yeah. Do you teach at retreats? Do you show at any other, like, do you vend at any other, like, anything besides Nashville Needlework Market? Like, where do you do your trunk shows? Where can people meet you in person, basically?
It's not easy to meet me in person because I teach, so it's hard for me to get away and travel like a lot of other designers do. Like I can't really take time off when I'm teaching. Right. So mostly it's online. So like these kinds of events, like live events I've participated in, and not that I would ever be opposed to doing an in-person retreat. It just, you know, it's a little bit hard to schedule. So it'd have to be something that like would work for my schedule. And, you know, trunk shows, I tend to not do them as for the same reason of just like, it's like something that I think is like so cool, but it's hard for me to keep track of where the trunk show is. And so I kind of have to pick like what things am I going to do because I have like so many irons in the fire. So that's one that it just hasn't been one I've been able to keep up with really. The best ways to keep up with me, I would say like are my YouTube channel, Instagram. I go live on Instagram sometimes. Maybe I'll go live on YouTube eventually. I think it's really fun. So yeah, you can check me out. I'm Luminous Fiber Arts on Instagram and Facebook. I'm Misty Pursel on YouTube. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website, and you know I send out like a monthly email just kind of talking about tips and things like that, or if I have new designs I announce them. Those are like the best ways to keep up with me at the moment.
One of the funniest comments we have is from Diane Wilson, and when you were talking about your gathering, she said you should do one that says gathering dropped needles. And I thought that was so funny. I was like, oh, I would totally stitch that.
All right, I'll make a note.
Because I can't tell you how many times that I find needles on my floor, which I know is horrible, but it does happen.
I found one like in my clothes the other day, and I'm like, how?
Oh my gosh!
How did I get it on my clothes? Yes, I know. Like, yeah, thread. Yes, you would expect thread. I've had thread attached to me, but not a needle. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my new excuse is like our bedroom is kind of like dark. I don't know how to explain it, but I've told Kevin like, hey, can you make the light bulbs brighter? And he's like, no. And I'm like, so then that's now my excuse. I'm like, well, then I can't see it. I can't see the needle. He's He's like, I don't
You need like a
think
metal
that.
detector on your bed for checking before you go to
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm looking to see. One thing that I thought was really neat that I might try in the future is like on your some of your patterns. Let me find one that has it that I thought I could try. Is on some of the stars you have, like here, like how
Hmm.
you put a button in it. And so I was thinking you could, people, us, just any pattern, we could just pop a button in the middle
Yeah.
of a star. And I haven't done that before. And I thought that'd be really neat. That was something that I think you have a lot of that I think is really cute. Um, Somebody wants to know if you're going to have, like, how often are you going to come out with Christmas designs in the future?
Well, I tend to release Christmas. I always do Christmas designs like around Christmas, and sometimes I'll have them at market. Once in a while, I'll do a Christmas design also with like the fall releases. So, like this year, I'll have a Christmas design coming out with fall as well. I'll have Christmas designs coming out at Christmas, so like around November, and then I'm also planning one or two Christmas designs for market next year. So I do them pretty often. Like I said, like about 2 times a year, maybe 3 times a year. Just kind of depends on the year. I wanted to mention about the buttons too. So I think that's a really good idea to add them to the stars. And if you put them on a pillow, ask me how I know. It's a lot easier to put them on after you've stitched it rather than at the end after you've put the whole pillow together. So like I have forgotten, like on this one,
Oh,
you can't tell because I hit it really well, but I actually forgot to put the buttons on. I was photographing the model for the pattern, and I'm like, oh no, I forgot to put the buttons on. And so you can put it on at the end, but it's a lot easier on you if once you've stitched this and you interface it, you just sew the buttons on
right.
then sew up the pillow, add the stuffing, and you can iron it and it'll be fine. You just iron it face down. So if you forget, you can add them after. It's just more work because you have to start on the back, and sew through the front. So save yourself a hassle and don't forget to put them on.
Yeah. What interfacing do you use?
I use, I think it's P44F. It's a Pellon one.
Oh, yeah.
Again, it's one Vana has recommended. So I use that one. And sometimes I'll use another thing that she recommends, which is to put like some white Kona behind the front piece to make it stand out more from, like it helps kind of make it pop more. I don't always do that, but I often do. It just kind of depends on the design and the fabric if I think it needs it. And that would be for pillows. I wouldn't do it on an ornament.
Do you stitch in a hoop or do you stitch in hand?
I do a few different things. So usually if it's 40 count, I'll stitch in hand because I think the stitches look fine when it's one strand, but I don't think my in-hand stitching with 2 strands looks as good. So if I'm doing 2 strands, which is like most of my designs are 2 strands, I'll either use a hoop or I'll use stretcher bars.
Okay.
So I have, what is my hoop called? I was gonna look it up here. Hardwick Manor is the hoop that I'm using. I use like a 6-inch hoop. I've wrapped it, and then I put the stitching in, and I don't end up closing it up. Like I don't twist it tight. It just stays fine, like tight enough for me. I do hear people like worry or wonder about hoops because of like crushing the stitches, but I've never found that my stitches look flat, and no one's ever come up to me and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe how flat your stitches are. So I think it's fine. I also use the stretcher bars for like ornaments. So like a 6-inch, those 6-inch Edmonds mini bars with, and then you just use the tacks to push that in. I really like that for ornaments because you don't have a lot of fabric waste. What about you? Do you use a hoop or what do you use?
I stitch in hand, but I do think, Cheryl, who does a lot of our stitches in a hoop, and I think her stitches always look so much better because I feel like it just keeps it really flat, but I just stitch in hand.
It's so much nicer to stitch in hand a lot of the time because it's so much faster. I mean, at least when I'm using a hoop, I can stitch two-handed, which helps. So it's still like fast, but it's not as fast as doing the sewing method, I don't think.
How do you pick, like when you're designing a chart, how do you decide if you're going to use Weeks, like a classic colorworks, Weeks dye works, or a silk? How do you make that decision?
That's a great question. If it's cotton, it's really, and I often use a mix of like overdyed and DMC in the same pattern. So it's really just like whichever one is closest to the color that I've chosen on the screen is going to be the one that wins. And then I would say, with silk, definitely, like I like one color designs because it helps you kind of like focus. Not to say that multicolor designs don't let you focus on what's there, but it kind of like helps you just kind of really see what's there if it's one color. So, where there's a small design where there's not as much going on, it's kind of cool to just use the one color. And it also just feels special to have silk, and I like the shine. So I guess smaller projects that I think lend themselves to being one color, and I like the simplicity of them that way. That's when I would use silk, but I don't know. It's kind of just my mood too, honestly.
And how do you determine like what fabric you're going to use? Is it kind of the same thing?
Yeah, it's whatever color looks best with the flosses. So oftentimes I'll pick the flosses and then lay them on different fabrics and see like what looks most harmonious, and make sure that if I have a white or a cream, that it's going to show up well enough. And so again, in the design software, I'm already kind of picking out a color of fabric when I design. So I don't like design with a white background. I pick a color, and then I just try to match kind of what's going on. But it's difficult at times matching floss and matching fabric to what's on the monitor because it's not actually that accurate. So like I'm designing with whatever DMC 10, but the DMC 10 on the screen doesn't look like DMC 10 in real life a lot of the time. So yeah, it's just like a starting point for me to pick a fabric and floss on the screen, and then I just have to pull it and see like what actually looks good. So I'll get out like a DMC color card. I have like the ones with the real floss on them. That's really helpful to kind of get started. And I find that like the longer I design, there's certain colors that I just always gravitate towards. Like, I love black coffee or ribbon red, like some of the classic colorworks colors that are like my favorites. I really like emerald from Weeks Dye Works or capri. Yeah, there's just certain colors I tend to gravitate to, and so I kind of know on some of them like what it's going to be. And if I could like request that dyers add more of something, it would be more shades of orange, so that I can do more Halloween designs and overdyed flosses, because sometimes like only the DMC has like the range that I need, and I'd love to have a little bit more to play with.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so you kind of are saying you start with the floss and then do the fabric?
Usually. Once in a while I might, well, I guess, okay, maybe that's not entirely accurate. If I know like I want a blue fabric for this design that I'm thinking of, I might pick the fabric background first and then start picking colors that go with it. But a lot of times I think it's the other way around. It ends up being that the floss or the fabric is second and the floss is first.
And then how do you decide the fabric count? Is it based on how you want to finish it?
Sometimes it's based on the size that I want it to be. Like some of the 40 count designs that I showed, I wanted it to be kind of smaller, so it ended up being a little bit bigger if I stitched on a higher count. I tend to prefer 32 and 40 counts because of the coverage that you get. So with 32 count and 2 strands, you get really good coverage. And then with 40 count with 1 strand, again, I really like the coverage on that. That's not to say that they don't look nice in other ways. It's just that's my personal preference. But I do find that many people who stitch my designs don't stitch on 40 count, and so I don't tend to use it as much, knowing that a lot of people seem to stitch on like a 32 or 18 count, or 32 or 16 count, or a 38 18 count, 36. Oh my gosh, my numbers. I'm all mixed up today.
It's like so they all run together. It's that whole it's hard to count thing, right?
Yes, for me, counting is still hard.
I'm always trying to I'm always like, is 36 divided by 2 16 or 18, or do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Because I usually just use Ada. Well, thank
Well,
you.
you work a lot with yardage there, right? So you just have to think like yard, half a yard, maybe.
Yeah,
36 and 18. I don't know.
Yeah, and I just feel like 32, 36. Well, I just am like 28. I know 28 is 14. That's good.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny when I went to college. I used my dad used to he always would go to Vegas, and so he decided he was going to teach me how to play blackjack. And so I was like literally like 21, young and stupid, not that stupid, but he was trying to teach me how to play blackjack, and I couldn't count. And he's like, I sent you to college and I paid for your college and you cannot add. And I'm like, no, I can add, but I can't add and try to learn the game at the same time. He got so mad at me.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm paying for your college. Like, that should enable like counting. And I'm like, I know, but like, you're trying to teach me all this. So that's a funny story.
I understand. I feel like, I can do math. It's just going to be a slow math. Like, it's not on the tip of my tongue. Other
Right.
things are, but math takes me longer.
Right, yeah. So we're going to give away to 3 winners a set of your patterns. So each person, we're going to divide this up into segments of 3 and give it to 3 winners. You have to enter by Monday, June 17th. And so Misty's going to ask you the question to answer in the comments when the video is over.
So my question is, what would be another design you'd like to see in the Gathering series?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. Awesome. So thank you so much for being our guest. You can find all of Misty's patterns at Fat Quarter Shop. Make sure you follow her on Instagram and her YouTube channel. And I hope that if any of you didn't know about Misty and Luminous Fiber Arts, that now you do.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate being able to be here with you today.
Yeah,
so fun.